what we worship matters. And not only that, but what people think we worship matters. You see, I think that it could have been very easy for Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego to justify bowing down to the idol, something like this. They could have said, okay, if we don't do this, we're going to get thrown into a burning, blazing fire. That doesn't really seem to help anyone. So how about we just go out there and do it with everyone else, but while we bow down, we will pray to God. And then we won't be committing idol worship and we won't be getting killed. I think that kind of thinking happens a lot with Christians. We try and think about how we can kind of worship God and not kind of get ourselves into too much trouble or be too offensive to anyone around us. But of course, for Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego, what they realise is that if they go out with everyone else and bow down to this idol with everyone else, even though in their heart of hearts and me and God know what's going on, everyone else is like, oh, cool, Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego worship idols like us. So to go and bow down would communicate, even if they sort of worked out some way that they thought that it would be okay, to go and do it would actually be to communicate worship of the king, worship of the idol, and a lack of trust and faith in God. So I think what we see there is that how we live in the world matters. Our actions communicate where we have our trust placed. And of course, therefore, what's more difficult for us today, though, is to think about what the golden statues of 21st century Australia are, because, of course, there is no one mandating that we roll on down to Anzac Park and bow down at the cenotaph or something like that. So we don't have to kind of say, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to come up here to St Aidan's instead. But there are all sorts of more subtle idols in the world, and many things that are good. Things like family, money, power, sex, food. These are all things that are good gifts from God to be used rightly, but that our world puts into position number one and asks us to bow down to. And so what we need to do is to think about what are the idols which my friends and family worship, and what does it look like for me to live in such a way that demonstrates that I worship God and not these created things. And it's really hard to get specific because it can be so circumstantial. But let me take sport as an example. You'll know, because you have to suffer through my sermons, that I'm a fan of sport. And particularly I don't mind the AFL, although I haven't followed it too much this year because my team sucks. You'll also know that AFL can be a huge idol for people, something that they kind of fall down and worship. People have shrines in their home, right, to their teams. It's crazy. So how does one in Australia engage in something that's good, but without it becoming an idol? And how do you communicate that with others? That's tricky to work out, but I think that of one way that I've tried to do that is that if football clashes with something that is more important, like church, I try and always choose that over the football. And so a number of years ago, my team was in the grand final, and there was a church camp on that I needed to go to, and I went to that. And And it actually exposed a little bit of night because I felt sad the whole time because I couldn't watch my team in the grand final. And we lost to West Coast, so I was kind of glad, and God must have paid me back in favour for worshipping him. But for me, that was how I tried to put together worshipping God instead of this thing that can be an idol, and trying to communicate to people that what was more important to me. I don't know what it is for you or how it works for you. It is very circumstantial, but it is important that we think about it and that we don't go for cop-out answers like I described the way Shadrach, Meshach and Abednego could have copped out and just bowed down and worshipped the idol anyway. What we worship matters, and what people think we worship when they look at us matters.